A child runs barefoot through a dusty street in West Africa. Late afternoon. The heat hangs heavy in the air. Market traders shout across crowded stalls while women balance baskets on their heads beside the road. Goats wander between cooking fires, and somewhere nearby, drums echo through the city before sunset. Nothing here feels dangerous. Nothing feels like history is about to split apart. But in 1884, thousands of miles away in Europe, a group of men are preparing to make a decision that will change Africa forever. Inside a building in Berlin, maps cover a long wooden table, ink pens, wine glasses, candlelight, and a silence far too calm for what's about to happen. At one end of that table sits a young cartographer, barely out of his 20s, sharpening a pencil. He has never been to Africa. By next week, his lines will decide which villages belong to which empire. No African king is invited into that room. No African language is spoken there. Only European empires deciding who will control lands they barely understand. And by the time those men stand up from that table, millions of Africans, including that child running through the market, will unknowingly wake up in countries created by strangers.
For centuries, Europe described Africa as empty, primitive, disconnected from civilization. The truth looked nothing like that. Long before most Europeans ever traveled inland, trade caravans were already crossing the Sahara carrying gold, salt, books, and silk between cities that rivaled anything in Europe at the time. In Timbuktu, scholars copied manuscripts by hand, while students traveled hundreds of miles to study astronomy, mathematics, and law. In Benin, bronze casters worked beside burning furnaces, shaping sculptures so detailed that European visitors who saw them centuries later refused to believe Africans had made them. Farther south, Great Zimbabwe rose from stone hills, walls built without mortar, standing centuries before any colonial army set foot there. And in Ethiopia, emperors ruled one of the oldest Christian kingdoms on earth, a kingdom that has never bowed to a foreign crown. This was never an isolated continent. It was a continent stitched together by kingdoms, trade routes, religions, languages, and rivalries long before Europe fully understood any of it. But by the late 1800s, Europe itself was changing fast. Factories spread across Britain, France, Belgium, and Germany, and the machines inside them consumed resources endlessly. Rubber for industrial belts, palm oil for soap and lubricants, copper for the wiring of a new electrical age, along with gold, ivory, and diamonds. And somewhere inside European governments, a shift happened that nobody announced out loud. Africa stopped being viewed as a continent full of people. It started being viewed as inventory. At first, European powers mostly stayed near the coastline. The interior remained unfamiliar, dangerous, unpredictable. Then the explorers arrived. One man sits beside a fire deep in the Congo basin, writing notes into a journal while insects scream in the darkness around him. Not far off, a young father, we'll call him Bozenj, watches the stranger from the tree lean with his son on his hip, curious but wary. The explorer watches local traders move ivory along the riverbanks. He sees forests that seem to stretch forever, thick with rubber vines. And slowly, he realizes something Europe will realize soon after him. The Congo is unimaginably rich. Back in Europe, those reports spread fast through governments and royal courts, and almost overnight, Africa becomes a race. Britain wants control of trade routes. France wants territory stretching across the continent, coast to coast. Belgium wants the Congo for itself. Germany wants colonies powerful enough to compete with empires that have had a head start of centuries. But underneath all of it, Europe is afraid of one thing, and it isn't Africa. It's each other. Because if every empire rushes into Africa at once, with no rules and no agreements, war between European powers suddenly stops being unthinkable. Bozenj goes home that night and tells his wife about the strange man by the river. Neither of them thinks of it again for years. So in 1884, Europe gathers in Berlin. The room feels elegant. Crystal glasses, expensive suits, polished floors reflecting candlelight. But the conversation inside is colder than any battlefield. Maps of Africa stretch across giant tables while politicians lean over them, discussing rivers, coastlines, minerals, ports. The young cartographer from the opening leans in, ruler in hand, waiting for instructions. The cartographer slides his ruler across the map and draws a straight line through territory he has never seen. Territory that, hundreds of miles away, includes the stretch of river where Bozenj's village sits. That single line cuts through ethnic groups who've lived together for generations. Another line splits a kingdom in half. Another isolates a community from trading partners it has depended on for centuries. Outside Berlin, millions of Africans have no idea any of this is happening. Bozenj's family keeps harvesting and fishing as they always have. Children keep playing in village streets across the continent, including, somewhere far to the north, the same child from the opening, now a little older. Kings keep ruling their territories, certain that tomorrow will look like yesterday. None of them know that a stranger in Europe has just decided, with a ruler and a pencil, which flag will fly over their homes. By the end of the conference, nearly the entire continent has been claimed on paper. Africa is partitioned before most Africans even know a conquest has begun. At first, it's just rumors traveling along the rivers, foreign men carrying rifles, moving deeper inland, villages being forced to collect rubber, entire communities disappearing. Then the violence reaches Bozenj's village. He stands beside a pile of harvested rubber while a colonial officer inspects the weight. It isn't enough. The officer barely reacts before soldiers move in. Bozenj's son, the boy who once watched the explorer from the treeline, now older, is among those taken as a hostage to guarantee the next quota is met. Homes are burned. Somewhere deep in the forest, Bozenj understands this isn't trade anymore. It's extraction, enforced at gunpoint, and his family is the collateral. Under King Leopold II of Belgium, the Congo Free State becomes one of the most brutal colonial systems in modern history. Rubber quotas are enforced through terror. Children are held hostage while adults work. Villages that resist are burned to the ground, and soldiers cut off hands as proof that bullets weren't wasted during punishment raids. Millions die from murder, starvation, and disease tearing through communities already shattered by violence. Bozenj never learns what happened to everyone he loved that year. Most families like his never make it into any record at all. And the entire time, Europe was richer. Factories expand. Industries boom. Fortunes are made. Most of the people benefiting from it will never see the forests the wealth came from, and most will never ask. But Africa does not surrender quietly. Across the continent, resistance movements rise against colonial armies, and some of them win. In southern Africa, at the Battle of Isenelwana in 1879, Zulu regiments move across open ground with terrifying speed and discipline. British soldiers expect another easy colonial victory. Instead, thousands of Zulu warriors encircle the British position completely. By sunset, more than 1,000 British troops lie dead. The defeat shocks Europe. Newspapers struggle to explain how an African army has just destroyed part of one of the world's most powerful militaries. Britain doesn't retreat. It escalates. More rifles, more artillery, more soldiers than before. Farther west, Samori Touré spends years fighting French expansion across West Africa, relying on mobility and strategy to avoid total defeat again and again. It takes the French 16 years to finally capture him. And then Ethiopia changes everything. In 1896, Italy invades expecting just another colony. European newspapers have already assumed the outcome before the war even begins. But Emperor Menelik II has spent years preparing, weapons imported, armies organized, messengers sent across the empire calling tens of thousands of soldiers to war. Among those soldiers marching toward Ottawa is a young rifleman named Tesfaye, a farmer's son who has never held a weapon issued by his own government before this year. He doesn't know yet that he's about to take part in the only decisive defeat of a European invasion force during the entire scramble for Africa. At Ottawa, Ethiopian forces crush the Italian invasion completely. Tesfaye survives. He'll go home afterward to a farm that, unlike almost every other piece of land on the continent, was never claimed in Berlin and never will be. The news of Ottawa spreads across the continent like a shockwave. resistance no longer feels impossible. It feels like proof. By the early 1900s, almost the entire continent is under European control, except Ethiopia, where Tesfaye is now an old man telling his grandchildren about Adwa by firelight, the one story in the region that doesn't end with, and then the soldiers came. Everywhere else, railways cut across landscapes that once connected kingdoms naturally. But these tracks aren't built for Africans. They're built to move resources toward ports, where ships wait to carry that wealth back to Europe. Colonial schools force children to learn foreign languages. Communities that once traded freely across open land suddenly find themselves split by borders. Families wake up divided between different colonies without ever having moved an inch. The same kind of division that once tore through Bozenj's region, now repeated across 1,000 other villages whose names never made it onto any European map. Generation after generation grows up inside systems they never chose. And still, resistance doesn't disappear. It changes shape. Workers organize strikes. Writers publish anti-colonial newspapers. Political movements spread quietly through cities and universities, waiting for the right moment. After World War II, that moment arrives. The same European empires that once carved up Africa are now exhausted by a war of their own. Across the continent, independence movements rise faster than colonial governments can contain them. One nation gains freedom, then another, then dozens more in less than 2 decades. But even after colonial rule ends, the borders stay exactly where Europe drew them in Berlin generations earlier. The same lines that cartographer once drew with a ruler in an elegant room, never imagining the families on the other side of his pencil. And so do many of the tensions those borders created: modern conflicts, resource struggles, ethnic divisions forced together under colonial maps. Many of them can still be traced back, in part, to that conference room. Maybe the strangest part of this entire story is how quietly it started. Not with explosions, not with armies storming beaches, but with a handful of men sitting comfortably around a table, drawing lines across a continent they barely understood, while a child ran barefoot through a market thousands of miles away, completely unaware that his future had just been decided by a pencil. That child grew old inside the borders those men drew. So did his children. So did Bozenj's descendants, and Tesfaye's, and millions of others. Most of them disappeared without leaving a name behind. Those lines changed millions of lives. Many of them are still being felt today.